All right, guys. So we talked about the 1920s. We looked at the politics of the 1920s and then kind of the culture of the 1920s. So what we're going to take a look at is how that led to the causes of the Great Depression. Okay, so we're going to introduce what's going to lead into the second half of the unit as the Great Depression. Okay, so we're looking at a 10-year period from 1929 to 1939. So just to recap again, you do not have to write this down, but we're just going to kind of make that connection how the 1920s led into the Great Depression. So remember, we talked about credit. So people were buying things that they couldn't necessarily afford right off the bat. They were using that installment paying or that easy credit. So people were buying cars, appliances, and even clothing. We looked at the style of the flappers in the 1920s. Okay, so 1920s, a big party. We weren't being kind of financially responsible, and nobody was really checking it and how these loans or how this credit was going to be giving out. Okay, so this is going to kind of come into play. Why is this bad? Why were the 1920s bad? So with that idea of easy credit, people didn't actually have the money that they were spending. So when it came time to pay that installment, most of the people did not have money to actually afford those payments. All right, so this is where you're going to start writing. So your title is going to be Causes of the Great Depression. So we're going to look at long-term causes and then the immediate cause. Okay, so the first one we talked about this several units ago with this idea of overproduction. We see overproduction both with farmers and agricultural workers, which causes the price to drop. We also see that with factory workers, okay? As soon as World War I ends, the demand is going to go down. So we're still producing things, but people aren't buying as much. Even with easy credit, people aren't buying as much, okay? So factories have to lay off workers because they have to slow down production, and the farmers can't pay back their loans for that new fancy equipment that we talked. So prices are dropping, low demand, people begin losing their jobs. Okay, so big thing, overproduction. We see that in both the industry with the factory workers and with agriculture and farmers. Okay, so after World War I, demand for goods is going to drop both agriculturally and industrially. Okay, so this is where the easy credit part is going to come in. Cause number 2 is going to be bank failures. What happens is the bank is the ones that are loaning the money out to the people. Okay, the banks get a little short for money, so they call back that loan. Okay, remember I gave you that loan to buy the car. You have to pay that loan back. When they cannot pay it, the banks have to close. The banks literally don't have any more money to lend out to people, and the problem becomes they don't even have enough to cover what should be in your account. Okay, so let's say that, you were responsible, you did not take out any loans, and, times start to get tough, and you go to get your money out of the bank. Because the bank loaned out all of their money to these bad lenders, they don't even have the money that should be protected in your bank account. Okay, so banks begin to close, and people begin to lose their whole life savings. Okay, so we see in this cartoon it kind of wraps it up in a really easy way to understand. So you see the man talking to the squirrel, unrealistic, but other than that, very accurate. And it says on his coat, he's the victim of a bank failure. And the squirrel says, why didn't you save some money for the future when times were good? And he said he did. So even those people who were being responsible and saving money in their bank account, they lost all of their money due to kind of these banks lending loans to people who couldn't pay them back. Okay, so in that combination with people losing their money, they can't pay back. You see kind of this cycle. There's no one to kind of bail them out. The banks are closing. It's a desperate situation. Nobody has help. This slide is one that you do not need to write down. It just kind of illustrates how this is a deep cycle of debt. Okay, so again, as the year kind of goes on, the number of banks are dropping in rapidly during this time period. All right, cause number 3, okay? This is going to be an uneven distribution of wealth. So mostly the Great Depression is hitting the people who are in the lower and the middle class because a small number of the people are controlling majority of the money. Okay, once they get wind that banks are closing, they're holding on to the money. Okay, the way the economy works, you have to spend money in order for it to flow through the economy. Well, when the wealthy understand that the economy is not doing well, they are holding on to their money for security. So they're not spending money, so no money is flowing to the lower and middle classes. All right, number 4, it's going to be this idea of buying on margin. Okay, this sounds really complicated, and we get into kind of this buying stocks with money that you didn't really have. And the big thing is people believed in this idea of speculation. Okay, speculation is the idea you are speculating, you are assuming that when you purchase a stock, you are going to profit from it. Okay. Now, when we talk about buying on margin, you're buying a stock or you're buying ownership into a company with borrowed money. Okay, so now if you profit, that's awesome. You can pay back that. Okay, but when the company does not do well, like during the Great Depression, you're actually going further into debt and then you can't pay back the stock that you borrowed. Okay, so that part down here, so the stock crashes, you lose your money. You can't pay back the stockbroker who gave you that loan. Okay, and remember, we went back to this idea of a laissez-faire government, so there's nobody there to regulate what's going on or to make sure that you had the actual money before you bought stocks. Okay, so this is going to falsely inflate the stock market, causing the infamous stock market crash. Okay, so as soon as people got wind that it was not going well and they didn't want to lose money, they started to panic sell. So immediately, they don't want to lose money, and the stocks are going to cause them to lose money. They try to sell. That actually makes the problem worse. Stocks are worthless. People who bought on margin could not pay. Stockbrokers go broke. This is going to cause the stock market crash. Okay, so we have 4 long-term causes, and number 5 is going to be the immediate cause. Okay, number 5 gets nicknamed Black Tuesday. Okay, Tuesday, October 29th, the stock market is going to completely bottom out, launching the United States into the Great Depression. Okay, so you see, the end of the 1920s, it's falsely inflated with money from people buying on margin, and then you're going to see an immediate and dramatic crash. So they're ultimate highs, but you see the stock is going to completely bottom out and be worthless. Okay, so make sure that you got the 4 long-term causes, and then next to number 5 with Black Tuesday, so you need to know the stock market crash with that, and that's going to be the immediate cause. Okay, tomorrow or Monday, we will look at what life was like during the Great Depression.